Welcome to Adjusted Reality, a podcast series trusted by the adjusted and brought to you by the Foundation for Chiropractic Progress, where we learn from athletes, celebrities, influencers, and healthcare professionals about how to optimize health in a fun, relatable way. Join me, Dr. Sherry McAllister, as I speak with author, yoga therapist, and physical therapist director, Rachel Krentzman. Rachel is a physical therapist and certified yoga therapist, and she has an amazing 2 books out: Yoga for a Happy Back, A Teacher's Guide to Spinal Health Through Yoga Therapy, and Scoliosis, Yoga Therapy and the Art of Letting Go. A graduate of McGill University, Rachel completed her 2,000-hour teaching training at the College of Puma Yoga. Rachel has been integrating yoga into her physical therapy practice for over 20 years and is the co-founder of Wisdom Body Yoga Therapy, the first 800-hour yoga therapy training program in the Middle East. She is on the accreditation committee for the International Association of Yoga Therapists and is a passionate and inspired yoga instructor in the healthcare system. Rachel offers online trainings for yoga professionals and the general public on yoga for spinal health and scoliosis. It is such a pleasure to bring you to Adjusted Reality, Rachel.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So first off, everybody that's kicking into this Adjusted Reality podcast, I want you to know one thing. Either one of her books are quite fabulous, but I want to recognize that today we're going to talk about happy, and we're really going to get deep into happy back, because I think if we live our life in a way in which we respect, honor, and appreciate how our spine carries us throughout the day, we're going to have better days. And with a better day comes stronger, more flexible opportunities. And that is why we brought Rachel here today. So Rachel, let's just jump in. I'm going to tell you, after reading your story about swimming in the ocean, I want our audience to hear it because there was a fearful factor. And if you could share with us your routine that you're up to and where you are as you jumped into the ocean every day and started to think about how your body, your mind, and your fear came into play. So let's just start right there.
Oh, that's quite a start. I think that I've always been an ocean lover. Actually surfed this morning, so I'm in the water as often as possible. And I just learned so much from the sea in terms of how life is so much like the sea or like the ocean. And it very much relates to movement, to meditation, to mindfulness, to how we work with problems in our lives and how we deal with pain as well. So what we know about the water is, or the ocean, is that it's unpredictable. There are good days and there are bad days. We never know what the waves will be, and we can't always control it, right? It's not under our control. And so a lot of what I wrote about in the book was about really swimming out to a buoy, because we have these buoys where I used to swim in La Jolla in San Diego. And how I realized that the buoys were there and they're anchored. So they give you a sense of safety, that you know where you are, you know where you're going. But in truth, they're just something floating in the water. And so it hit me one day that the buoy was sort of an illusion I had in my mind, that if I was able to control and know exactly where I'm going, then everything would be okay. And but I had to learn slowly but surely through life lessons, through my own back injury, through a lot of things that happened to me in life, is that we really don't know. We're really sort of out at sea without a buoy. And how can we use ourselves as a resource? How can we feel safe and good in our own body and at peace with the unpredictable?
It's so nicely put because oftentimes in reading your book, it was about control. You started with being, the overachiever and always kind of even taking your yoga that way. It's like, well, if I could do this, then I could do that. And I want everybody listening to start to recognize that being the best at everything is so overrated is we got to actually internalize and have kindness in our hearts to be able to function at our peak performance. And that sometimes takes us back to looking at, I want to focus two parallel tracks. One is going to be pain related because there's many people listening right now, and I know you're out there that have daily pain. Then there's the others that are trying to maximize their performance. And we've had lots of Olympic athletes, world record holders, Guinness Book of Record holder breakers that have come to Adjusted Reality podcast, recognizing two things. One, we can't control outside of ourselves. And two, we need to have better options. And that's what Rachel's going to bring today for you. So, Rachel, let's start with pain. Tell us your story. And you came to physical therapy and then you moved to yoga therapy. Can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Sure. Um, I started training in yoga therapy pretty young in life and graduated when I was 23 from McGill. And I was, wanted to be a healthcare professional, wanted to help people, and I'm relatively active, so I enjoy dancing and, sport. I wasn't a professional athlete by any means. And I got into the hospitals. I worked in many systems. So I worked in hospital systems with trauma, with neurosurgery, orthopedics, with kids, with adults, brain injuries, all kinds of different. And then I eventually landed in a more outpatient kind of facility where we work with people with day-to-day pain issues. Um, and I was working with people, and I often would find that the things that I was taught, initially that should work didn't always work. The techniques, the tools. I felt like I needed a bigger toolbox. I needed more information. And I also felt limited that there wasn't a lot of connection in terms of the pain and the person. So often we know that these exercises are good for back pain, but we don't often look at the whole person and what's going um, on their physical body, their energy level, their emotional body, their personality, and sort of what they're like and what's going on in their life at the moment, and what they're able to do and what they're not able to do. So everyone is very different. As soon as I started yoga, and I started yoga for myself, for my own back pain, I have scoliosis, and so I had chronic tension. It was just chronic tension in my neck and upper back for many years. And that was from my job, lifting and moving patients in hospitals and all kinds of things. So I would have this chronic pain, and I started practicing yoga. And I noticed that after practicing for a short while, maybe a month or two, that pain was gone. I didn't have it anymore, that nagging, aching pain that I woke up with every day that I wanted someone to press with their finger into my spine and, get that knot out. And then I started as a physical therapist to really break down the poses and to notice, well, what am I doing? What is happening? And because I have the physical therapy background, I was able to, figure out what muscles are stretching, what muscles are strengthening, um, understand what's going on in the body while I was practicing. And I thought to myself, wait, this is something I can use with my clients, my patients. And it's a much more holistic approach. They can get a lot more out of 2 or 3 poses than maybe 2 or 3 simple exercises that target just one muscle. So I began to integrate yoga very slowly into the clinic. And I realized the clinic didn't have quite the space and the environment and, the right equipment and the right scene for people to practice in a calm way, because a lot of what yoga deals with is stress. And we all know that stress plays a huge part. And it's not, it's not an esoteric concept. I think it's pretty well researched that stress causes tension and pain. That anytime we have mental tension, the pain gets worse, and also that stress relates to tension patterns in the physical body. So I started to introduce it to clients. They started to do really well. I was doing really well. And at some point, I felt limited that I couldn't really teach yoga the way I wanted to in the clinic setting. So I opened my own clinic, one that had a little more of a relaxing atmosphere where I could spend at least an hour with each patient, which just wasn't a possibility in many healthcare facilities. And in that framework, I just had really excellent results.
So as we go through, and you said some really insightful pieces, is number one, you had to learn through your own back pain. And I encourage everyone that there is no one size fits all, because as healthcare providers, chiropractors, physical therapists, yoga therapists, we are trying to do our best for the patient, but the patient has to also be able to look at what is going to be right as an option for you. And sometimes coming from a place of pain is very different than, say, I want to increase my performance, because part of the therapy, part of the treatment is going to be starting where you are. And it reminds me, just looking back at the buoy story that you told, is that buoy was technically nowhere in the ocean until you got there, and it separated nowhere to now here. I'm now here, and I recognize now that I can swim back and forth, but the buoy is just one place to be. It's just a spot. And life is kind of that way. It's fluid, and opportunities come and they go. And we're hoping, as we start to see so much variation and collaboration between healthcare providers, and why I so love your stories, because you molded what you learned from a very, very great university back into some deeper thought processes of how and why the body reacts to what it does. So my next question, in your recent book, Scoliosis, Yoga Therapy and the Art of Letting Go, you learned about your scoliosis. And I just want to reflect for a moment. The Foundation for Chiropractic Progress did a Harris poll asking 18 to 24-year-olds how often they were getting neck pain. And 65% of them said often. So I'm thinking back to, our lives. You talked about stress, and technology can absolutely create biomechanical stress on our bodies. So let's go to scoliosis. For those that are listening for the first time, don't know very much about scoliosis, if you would start with the basics and then tell us a little bit about how scoliosis changed you and how you came to looking at treating patients with it.
Okay. Well, scoliosis is an S-shaped curve. So it's not like a slouching forward, like a kyphosis would be. It's more of a sideways curve, which um, creates a bit of a hump in the back, but more on one side than the other. Scoliosis can happen for a number of reasons. Um, Often it's genetic, and it just kind of comes out when you start growing. So you can have an idiopathic scoliosis that's pretty severe, um, usually identified as a teenager. Or you can have a functional scoliosis, which is a scoliosis that comes from habits, bad habits, work habits, carrying heavy bags on one shoulder, carrying babies on one hip, a lot of different things that we tend to do in life. So you can create a scoliosis, or you can have one that develops for no reason. And the ones that develop for no reason tend to be a little more intense and more extreme and are a little bit harder to treat. And with every scoliosis, with every curve, there's two components. There's a side bending of the vertebrae. The vertebrae lean over to one side. So there's a shorter side and a longer side. As well, there's a rotation. There's a twisting in this. So when I identified my scoliosis, I was 16. The doctor said, You have a scoliosis. All of a sudden, I went for a regular checkup to the pediatrician with my mom. We both had no idea what that was. We both got scared, which you do when you hear something's wrong with your spine. It's a scary thing, right? And he's like, okay, but we're just going to follow it. There's nothing you can do. And we'll see how it goes. And if it gets worse, then maybe we'll have to put a brace. And if it doesn't, then you'll be fine. Well, that already from the outset just starts off a whole pattern of fear in terms of, will I need a brace? Will I need surgery? Will I have back pain? And there are really no answers that I got personally. And as I interview most of my patients, they really don't get a lot of answers in terms of movement, self-care, different exercises, different treatment approaches that can help. They're really kind of sent off on their own and like, we'll wait and see. It's usually a wait and see approach that they're really left out of control, which is really the scariest thing, and sort of like the buoy, sort of being out at sea without anything and hoping for the best, but not knowing what will happen, right? And I think as I didn't need a brace and I didn't need treatment, but I always thought of myself as someone with a crooked spine. There's always this picture of something's wrong with my back. Am I limited? Can I do all the activities I want to do? So there's always that in the background. And really, once I became a physical therapist, and more when I started yoga later, in the later years, I started to really understand that this wasn't a disease. This wasn't something that I should be ashamed of. It wasn't something that, made me any less of a person or less capable of doing any activities in life. That it's just a normal variation of, sometimes what happens in the spine. Instead of looking at it from a negative point of view, I started to look at it more from a yogic lens. And yoga teaches us, so let's back up. In Western medicine or physical therapy, the way I was trained was really to look at pathology, what's wrong with you, and then to come up with a treatment to fix that. Okay, and come up with intelligent exercises to deal with that. From a yoga perspective, they start with this concept of nothing is wrong with you. You're perfect. Everything is right with you. And if there's pain, we're going to talk more physically, but this can be really, taken to the emotional realm. Well, but from a physical perspective, if you're perfect and everything, is okay, what are the obstacles? What's preventing you from being that perfect? What's preventing you from being in perfect alignment? We're going to talk about this specifically in scoliosis example, but in any back, herniated disc or kyphosis or, just your general back pain. So if you look at the body from the perspective of the body inherently knows how to be aligned and how to function and how to heal itself, then all you need to do is provide the right condition, right support. And once you do that, the spine will sort of find its way to being straight. And scoliosis is the perfect example. Because if you look at anyone with a scoliosis, the spine, if you have a little curve that goes in one way, the spine will adjust itself. The spine will correct itself. Now, it corrects itself by creating a second curve to balance out the first curve. And it's quite beautiful if you look at how the vertebrae are stacked up in a scoliosis and how there's a nice twist. It's almost like a DNA helix. You can look at it in that way. But the body is always seeking balance. The body is always trying to get us to have our head on straight, and it will do whatever it needs to. So if we provide the right conditions and we remove the obstacles, which might be bad habits, poor posture, weak muscles, tight muscles, mental tension, physical tension, overachieving, all kinds of things, right? Working too hard with the wrong muscles, poor breathing techniques, many, many reasons for back pain. If we remove those obstacles, then the spine will realign itself. So really all the health professionals and yoga teachers and chiropractors and, body workers that are out there helping people are really just helping provide the right conditions for you to heal. And if you really look at the body in this way, I feel that it helps you approach life in a much happier, more positive way. And I think it's just a better way to live rather than thinking something's wrong with me.
Well said. And I think that's where you get the quote art of letting go. And because you came from a place where it was fear first, because you don't know, and then that frustrating, let's just wait and see. When really you shouldn't be waiting at all, because there's the opportunity to start addressing that. That's where the healthcare providers really need to work together and collaborate. And to me, that collaboration really is communicating with each other, cooperating with what's being done for the patient, and the patient gets to decide. They're driving the car. They know which wheel's a little bit wobbly. They understand if there is a lot of junk in the trunk. So we've got to be able to move this body in a way that reflects driving a car that is a Ferrari, even if you weren't given a Ferrari. And that's the art that I love so much in reading the letting go portion of it, and really being able to reflect on the body being the best healer. And I think you said it as forgetting that the best healer is your own body and mind. And I would love you to kind of elaborate, because you've got some great stories in the book. Share with me some of those moments where you had epiphanies that it is the mind and the body working together to heal.
Wow. How much time do we have?
You take as much
Um,
time as you want, Rachel.
and the truth is, I'm seeing it every day more and more, the more I connect with it. But even in working with my yoga teacher, for example, in my own practice, I started to realize that sometimes, people are trying to heal. They're doing their exercises. They're going to get treatment. And you can almost do that too much. You can do that too hard. In other words, you can try too hard. And while I was, trying to exercise and stretch and massage and acupuncture and chiropractic and, everything I could do to get back on my feet, um, one thing I didn't look at was my mindset and the way that I was approaching all of these activities. It was with aggression, it was with violence, um, and I wasn't breathing properly. And I was creating a lot of tension in my body and in my mind by not doing the practice properly, not doing the exercises properly, and also by doing it with the wrong mind, being overly competitive. Now, part of that was my fault, but part of it wasn't. I just didn't know. So a lot of people just don't know um, how to activate, the muscles, what alignment to have. That's where a teacher comes in. That's where a therapist comes in to help say, hey, this is the way you're doing this. It's not what you're doing. What you're doing is fine, but the way you're doing it can be better. We can do this in a better way to maintain length in your spine, to soften the muscle, activate the core, to start to bring awareness to the pelvic floor, to start to build strength and space in the spine instead of compressing. And I remember the first time, I'll just talk about myself because it's easier than talking about other people, but the first time I practiced yoga for a long time, and I was a yoga teacher when I hurt my back. So that means I was practicing and I was teaching yoga, and I hurt my back in a yoga class. That was a shocker because yoga is supposed to be good for your back, right? And, I was eating healthy and exercising and moving, doing all the right things. And it was really just partly, it threw me back for a bit. And, I had to think about what I was doing. And I found a new way to practice with different teachers by slowing down, noticing that for me, I was going too far into my flexibility. Everyone thinks they should be flexible. Being flexible is the answer. Well, I was too flexible. So I was going too far into my flexibility, and I didn't have enough restraint, and I didn't have enough strength and enough awareness. And I didn't know. It's not my fault, but sometimes, and I say this in my book, sometimes in life, pain can be our greatest teacher.
Yes, it can.
And we don't like it. Nobody likes it. Everyone wants to move away from it. But if we really, really take a hard look at times in our life, obviously easier once you're out of it, kind of a bit on the other side. Those have been the times where you stopped doing what you're doing and paid attention to what you're doing. And only when we pay attention can we really make change. So these are just a few little kind of, insights to how paying attention, mindfulness, awareness, slowing down. We're running at 1,000,000 miles per hour in our life, and we never have a moment to just be where we are and to notice. I didn't know I was going too far. I didn't know I was pushing my limits. I didn't know I needed to work on stability more than these are all things I had to learn, and I had to learn the hard way. And the truth is, I wouldn't have learned if I didn't have pain. I would still be doing what I'm doing, and maybe something else would have happened, maybe not. Um, so that was my personal story on sort of the mind-body connection. But by seeing patients every day, all day, I've also noticed, if I can add one more quick story, that often what people need, what my patients need, is really just someone who listens, who really hears what they're going through, and is there for them, rather than giving them a million different tips and techniques and tools. Sometimes just to ease the fear, okay, the fear component of, I don't know what's happening to my body. I don't know what's going on, and I have nothing I can do about it. To have someone who say, I've been there, or I've seen this before, and I know you're going to be okay. And, to say, I know it's hard right now. Let's take it one day at a time and one step. And just eliminating the fear without even doing a single technique or exercise, they do better. The pain goes down. So I've seen firsthand how, the mind, the emotion, tension, stress, fear make pain worse and create pain.
Rachel, you're so present in your thought and how your own experience has been able to really kind of blossom the lotus flower is being able to share that moment with others, to kind of step back and reflect, have the awareness of where you're at. And I know in your book you described how you were injured in your own yoga class. And what was interesting is, you got a diagnosis that you herniated a disc, and it's significant. And back to where you were, which many of our patients have these fear factors, is herniation sounds like a horrific diagnosis. Like I'm done. And that is so far from reality. So I take my audience to adjusted reality. Once you
Cool.
understand, and the beauty of being with yoga therapists is that the teacher will arrive when the student is ready. And to be ready means you're willing to reflect. And there's things that you put in your book that I think everybody needs to know. And I'm going to go backwards because you say it as it's a way of life. And I'd like you to kind of go through some of the pieces that you consider as a way of life for the audience to start to become aware. Obviously, there's physical pieces to it. There's posture, breath, intention, awareness, the examination, your core beliefs, meditation, and visualization. Now, I just threw all of them in there. So, Rachel, tear those apart to help our audience think about all of those pieces in a way that your day goes by, and how you, as Rachel, the instructor, the physical therapist, and the person who deeply cares about her patients getting well, uses them.
Well, yoga is a way of life. It starts on the mat, but it really ends up becoming just how you live. And I think the first step is pause, is being able to, which many of us, especially now, really are not doing, especially with all the technology and WhatsApps and messages and emails kind of being thrown at us and everyone's expectations to get back to them right away. It's rare that we're unplugged, and it's rare, even if we're plugged in, that we stop and we pause to notice. And not, you don't always have to change something. First step is just pausing and noticing. It can be physical pain, saying, oh, I'm feeling some weird sensation right now. I'm going to that and be with it and take a few breaths and notice, where is it? Is it in one part of my back? Is it traveling down my leg? Is it going body? And does it change the thing we want to change? Because very rarely is pain constant and the same. And if we can start to notice pain changes over time, we start to realize that things aren't always so bad. There are bad moments and there are better moments. Just like in your emotional world, there are going to be bad days when you feel sad and you feel angry and you feel hurt, or you feel depressed or anxious. But what we do in mindfulness and yoga is we notice the feelings, we notice what's happening, whether it's in our physical body or in our mind. We step back, we witness that from the outside. And that's all. We just let it be. And if you let it be, you all of a sudden realize, hey, this changed. It changed from maybe 1 second to the next, or maybe from 1 hour to the one position to the next. That suffering or pain is rarely constant and at the same level. And I think that's comforting, just to know that things change, just like the waves in the ocean. You can go up, down, you can have a calm day, you can have a really bad day. And if you know that it will pass or it will change, then you're not stuck. So there's space. Okay, so the first step is pausing. And I think that we can do that in every aspect of our, right? Every single aspect. If we stop, notice what's happening, even in our interactions with people, look at the person in the eye, see what's going on for them, and then respond instead of react. So that takes out the fear, that takes out the extra tension, helps decrease the pain, but it also helps tell us what's going on, right? We can really see what's going on. And once we understand what's going on, then we can do something about it. So that's, probably the essence. The second way of life is the really seeing everything as, and especially ourselves, as having everything we need to heal, to be better, that it's all inside. We may not know how to access it. We may not know how to get there, but with the help of the right people, and it might take a team, right? Collaboration of a lot of different, styles of therapy, might be nutrition as well. There's all kinds of aspects to lifestyle. With the help of other people, they can help kind of shine a flashlight on areas that are dark that, maybe even though you're paying attention, you just don't see because they're deeply buried in a tunnel. So they might shine some things to you and you can become aware, and then you can start to make change. And the third part of yoga, which is a lifestyle, is that there is no yoga without discipline. Yoga is a practice. It's a daily practice. It's not something that's promised to help right away. You don't just sit and do a yoga pose and all of a sudden feel better. I wish that were the answer sometimes, if you're lucky, but in general, the benefits come over time and with practice and with discipline. And I think a lot of the time for people who are suffering in pain, the pain is just ringing so loud in their mind that they don't have time to and say, okay, I'm going to do this anyway. And it's hard to motivate. It's hard to find time. These are behaviors that we need to look at. We need to look at, why am I not taking the time to do what I need to do for my body? Why am I not considering myself important? Why am I not prioritizing my needs? Why am I not scheduling time in the middle of the day to get the treatment that I need? Right? Why am I not eating healthy? Why am I not sleeping enough? All of these things play about. Why can't I get up from the computer every hour and do a few stretches? Why am I stuck, having to sit and work for 8 hours at a time? So this goes much deeper than just the physical body and the herniated, which, by the way, almost everyone has a herniated or will have one in their life at some point. So at this point, it's for me like, okay, not a big deal. But when I was diagnosed, it was, it sounded horrible. I saw the MRI, it looked horrible. And luckily, I was already immersed in physical therapy and yoga to have the perspective to be like, okay, I got scared. I did freak out, but I took a deep breath and I kind of knew where to go. I had my people, I was working with teachers, I was working with friends. And so I felt, safe and contained. But discipline is very important, and it can be the smallest thing. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but you have to look at your ability to be willing to commit to yourself for a greater outcome. And without that, without the effort, nothing happens, nothing changes. So waiting for someone else to, give you the right pill or, do surgery is not the answer, because even if you need the pill and even if you need the surgery, you still need to do something for yourself to prepare for the surgery and to do rehab after the surgery. So it's a lot of commitment, and that's a very yogic concept.
It's really helpful to hear how you strung all of the pieces together, because whether you're in pain or you're recognizing I'm really hard on myself, and sometimes we need to reflect that us wanting the best doesn't mean you have to be the best. It means that you can reflect back on, what do I need to do to get there? And you never climb a mountain in one step. It's always one step after the other. And sometimes you really just need to stop and look to where you are. I remember when I swam Alcatraz, there was a moment in the ocean where I just had to stop. I knew what the destination was. I knew the water's cold and scary, but I remember my instructor saying, you'll never, ever be able to get that experience back again unless you stop and you do a 360. And I'm so glad that I had that instruction, because it's impossible to share with someone unless they've done it. And when you can stop and reflect and just look around, where are you? Where's the Golden Gate? Where's Alcatraz? Where's Coit Tower? And you're in the middle of, well, nowhere. There's no buoy out there. And you get that moment to say, I'm going to finish this swim no matter what. But at the end of the day, you look back and you say, but did I enjoy it? Did I thrive in that moment? Did I take that moment to juice my life back up with excitement and passion and endeavor and adventure? Or did I simply just stroke through it? 1, 2, 3, breathe, 1, 2, 3. And you get to choose your life. And Rachel, you squeezed it. You squeezed it hard. You looked at where your intentions were when you were injured, and you recognized that I deserve better. And you were so honest and vulnerable in your book. And I think that's where authentic leaders come from, is if you want to teach someone, you have to be authentic first with yourself. So if you're a parent listening right now and you have a child that maybe you're concerned about, they may have scoliosis, or it's yourself, you're suffering with nagging pain and you're not addressing it. Why? And you ask those questions really well, Rachel, is the why factor. And I want to go back to someone who I wish I could have met, and it's Albert Einstein. And he said, life is like riding a bicycle. In order to keep balanced, you just have to keep pedaling. And this is life. You kept pedaling through the diagnosis of scoliosis. You kept pedaling through a herniated disc that stopped you in your tracks. And now you're a teacher teaching others how to adopt and embrace the life that they have and how to slow down. And as we get to this aspect of adjusted reality, the listeners need to have homework, because I think you only get better when you start doing things, taking action. Having an action-oriented audience is why adjusted reality is now in 101 countries. And this is the moment that I'm going to ask our expert, What are the three very simple things? And you have some beautiful illustrations in the books. So I do encourage you, if you're suffering with scoliosis, you need some answers, get the book. If you want a happy back, get the book. So let's go back, Rachel. Three simple things that our audience can do at home to have a happy back and a better life.
Simple thing. The first is to move, to not stop moving. So if you find yourself sitting a lot during the, which is really what's happening now in our culture more, to take a break, to get up, and to do a few simple stretches, deep breaths, stretch your arms overhead, walk around a little bit, but don't stay in one position too long. So movement is life, and without movement, safe movement, you have to do the appropriate movement for you. But staying still or resting too much can actually make that worse. That would be my number one. The second thing I would probably recommend is learn how to breathe. It's something that we don't think about, but when we use our diaphragm and we breathe through our diaphragm, we bring more oxygen to our body and we mobilize our spine because our diaphragm is actually attached to our spine. And if we're not using our diaphragm, then our rib cage and our spine are very tight and they don't move very much. In addition, if we don't breathe properly, we develop a lot of tension in the neck muscles, the back muscles. So breath is really important. So I suggest finding someone who can teach you how to take a good diaphragmatic breath. And with that, learn how the breath coordinates with activating your core muscles. So that's one big thing, but just learn how to breathe properly. The third thing that I would recommend for homework is to commit to a few minutes a day of a home program. And the home program can be something that your physical therapist gave you, your coach gave you, your yoga therapist gave you. But to, get a personalized program and commit to a few minutes a day. A few minutes a day is better than an hour once a week. So for those of you who kind of sit all day at the computer, then go to the gym on the weekend, or go to one yoga class a week, but the rest of the week, spend hunched over a phone. I think it's better to do 5 to 10 minutes a day than an hour or an hour and a half intensive exercise once a week. So I would integrate that into your daily schedule.
I love it. I think that you've brought some very simple, and it's not easy because I know when you get to expert level, it's very complicated because you see all the pieces coming at you. But then, again, back to Albert Einstein, if you can't explain it simply, you just don't know it well enough, and you did it beautifully. We got our audience 3 homework items, and you did it beautifully. Listen, I want our audience to recognize that you put your time, your talent, and your experience into both of those books, Yoga for a Happy Back, A Teacher's Guide to Spinal Health Through Yoga Therapy, and second book, Scoliosis, Yoga Therapy and the Art of Letting Go. There's plenty of people out there that you love today that do not understand, that are suffering, or that just need to be better at what they're doing. And that's why this Adjusted Reality podcast exists, because we bring experts like Rachel to the podcast. So thank you, Rachel, for being with us today and exploring and sharing some of your experiences, the talent, and the education that goes along with having a happy back. I want to thank you for tuning into Adjusted Reality as we spoke to yoga therapist, physical therapist, and author Rachel Krentzman about integrating care for back pain, healing, and the art of letting go. One of the things that we asked was to get you homework, and she very willingly gave you some very simple homework to do. First and foremost, movement. What does that mean? Well, movement is the spice of life. If you're moving, you're going to be growing. And that's one of the pieces that if you're sitting at your desk, if you've had a long drive, Perhaps there is a long movie that you watch. Well, let's just get up. Let's get stretching. Let's get moving. And it's important for us to also recognize that breath really means everything. It's the opportunity that you know you're alive, is that you can breathe, and finding how to breathe with your core as you do exercise is very important. In fact, you won't believe how many injuries have been seen by chiropractors because instead of expiring, they inspire, or vice versa when they're working on their exercise program. Because as your body allows the energy to flow through it, it's easy to injure a muscle or create a problem for your rib cage by not knowing your breathing techniques or not following them. And even when you know them, sometimes you just forget them. So breathing techniques was her second one, taking the time to breathe from the diaphragm and knowing that that belly in and out makes a difference, because shallow breathing is what we do when we're stressed and our sympathetics have kicked in. So take the time to deep breathe and recognize that there's different ways to do it, whether it's through your nose or through your mouth. What does that look like? Whether you're holding one nostril as you breathe in or the other nostril. Yes, there is breath, and how to use it effectively is the key. Third thing, and as I look back to how we got where we are today, is are you getting enough movement and momentum and exercise into your life? And Rachel noted that she'd rather you do 10 minutes a day than an hour on the weekends. And I would love to say, set your goal. What's it going to be? Walking, running, biking, hiking, surfing? Can you do it daily? If not, ask yourself, why not? Put yourself first. You're worth it. You are the reason that you listen to Adjusted Reality today, and the choices you make will change the way you do things. And when you change the way you do things, things begin to get better. So, this podcast was brought to you by the Foundation for Chiropractic Progress and is a special gift for you listening today. Visit f4cp.org/health to get a copy of our Mind, Body, Spirit ebook, which focuses on many ways to optimize your health and the ones you love without the use of drugs or surgery. Now, please don't forget to subscribe, share the podcast with family and friends, rate and review. If you're feeling so inspired to learn more about chiropractic or to find a doctor of chiropractic near you, visit f4cp.org/find a doctor. We appreciate your support and look forward to checking in with you again soon.